These are paintings of the mythological figure Andromeda, bound upon the rock as she waits to be devoured by the sea monster Cetus. What did Andromeda do to deserve being bound upon a rock waiting for Cetus to devour her? Nothing. Absolutely nothing. In Greek myths, people, especially women, are always getting blamed or punished for things they simply did not do. Andromeda's mother, Cassiopeia, was proud of her daughter's intelligence and character and kindness and loveliness, so she bragged of Andromeda's great beauty in front of the Nereids, enraging Poseidon. And eventually, to prevent destruction of her homeland, Andromeda is offered up as a sort of divine sacrifice to the sea monster Cetus. The 19th century French painter Théodore Cheserero painted Andromeda not at the moment of being rescued by Perseus as almost every other painter, but in the process of being chained up by the Nereids. I love this painting. Look at the combination of horror and savage indignation at the injustice of her treatment expressed on her face. And I love, too, that the monster Cetus is half out of the frame, for isn't that the way monsters always are, just beyond the threshold, just beyond the pale? Shut the door, lock the windows, but Andromeda in bondage can do nothing but watch and wait. And the faces of the Nereids are such a welter of ambivalence, determined in their task, horrified by Andromeda's envisioned fate. Look how one's foot is literally keeping the monster away, the fury of their active hands contrasting with the imposed immobility of Andromeda. The contrast between iron chains and soft flesh. Now, almost every painter of the scene would highlight that contrast between cold, shackling iron and flesh, but I think Cheserero does it extraordinarily well. Most of all, those lovely but horrified faces, but not as horrified as Andromeda. Look at her hair. Classics be damned, there is something raw and primal and fierce and absolutely wild about Chesero's Andromeda. Maybe my favorite. Maybe. This quite striking 1678 Perseus and Andromeda by Pierre Mignard provides a pretty good summary of the whole story. First, we have Andromeda in the final stages being released from her chains. Don't exactly know why the cherubs are doing it, except in 1678, cherubs were everywhere. And there at the feet of Perseus is the monster Cetus. We already are on our way to Cetus as becoming a dragon, as the growing myth of the hero dragon slayer starts to take sway. And instead of eating Andromeda for dinner, Cetus found the sword of Perseus, who had flown in just on time, in Medusa's head in tow, on the wings of Pegasus, who had spontaneously sprung from Medusa at the moment of her death. Now, speaking of Medusa, you will see Medusa's head in almost every version of Perseus and Andromeda, and it's worth thinking about because she and Andromeda are forever bonded in a strange sisterhood of being punished outrageously for crimes they did not commit. There's a lot of drift during the medieval and Renaissance period of Cephas the water monster starting to resemble a dragon. That's because the whole folk narrative of a helpless maiden rescued by a knight who slays the dragon and then claims her heart was gaining currency everywhere. In 1516, the Italian poet Lodovico Ariosto published his Orlando Furioso, which contains an immensely influential recasting of Perseus and Andromeda into Roger and Angelica. The two stories are so close that often art historians can't figure out which account the artists are portraying. Here is Jean-Auguste Dominique Ingres' Perseus and Medusa, or Roger and Angelica. Fascinating painting. But it isn't my favorite version, and Ingres did numerous sketches and studies leading up to it, and while this is just a study, it's actually one of my favorite paintings of all time. It has been for almost 40 years. I love the empty spaces in this painting. I love the posing, and I love the whole feel of Andromeda. I am permanently fascinated by the relation between myth and dream, or myth and the unconscious, and think myth largely emerged from the unconscious and certainly constantly mirrors it. In a way, engaging with myth is a portal to our own unconscious beings. At any rate, here is the very dreamy French Odidon, Redans, Perseus and Andromeda. I love it. It is as if you can swim right into the changeful myth